So I dropped out of college. I spent a couple of years just working and making money. Um, and I could pay my bills and had a surplus of money, and I was happy enough. Like it was a job I could go. And the cool thing about restaurant industry is that you very much make your own schedule too. So like if you didn't want to work one night, there's a very good chance somebody else needed money and wanted to pick up your shift, so you could easily just swap shifts. If you wanted to work a night that you weren't working because you need money for something, you could easily pick up a shift and go make money. It's a very kind of a fluid industry when it comes to that. So I worked in the restaurant industry for like a couple more years. Yeah, what was you gonna say
Well,
something?
I was gonna go back and say, when people you were very passionate about anime, video games, and Dungeons and Dragon, and you said some people even said, "Hey, you're just depressed." How did you respond to that, and how did you internalize that? Because that's like, depending on who said that to you, whether it's a friend or family member, it's probably coming from someone that really cares about you. So how did you
Yeah,
respond to that?
I mean, they're like the only thing you can think of at that age is like maybe they're right, like maybe there's something wrong with me, because again, the only thing I gave a shit about was my hobbies, right? Like that was the only thing I cared about was my hobbies. But you eventually like you learn that it's just who you are, right? Like it's not like I'm letting myself to like fall into a hole and not do anything with my life. I'm still working my butt off. I'm still doing something in my life. I still have friends that I go hang out with. It's just my hobbies were not that of, I guess, the normal people. So you just kind of have to learn. Like that's not. Eventually, I learned that that's not the case. It's just I'm very passionate about a very small section of things that some people just aren't that passionate about.
Got it. So you at least had the confidence, or at least under self understanding, to not that like derail you, or at least your focus. So you went
Yeah,
you
and I
went
mean the other thing too. I mean, I can talk a little bit about it. And I've done a video about it. Is like I know what true depression looks like. Like my mom, you know, fights with to this day bipolar with like borderline depression. Like I have seen depression at its worst. I have seen what it does to people. My whole family has seen what it does to people. That's not me. That is not me. Very much not me. And my mom is a goddamn strong woman for being able to still be thankfully like with us to this day after some of the darkest times I've ever experienced in anyone's life. I mean, like mental hospital visits and stuff. Um, that I know what depression looks like, and I know that is not me.
so when you're going through that, I'm gonna assume it's probably, I don't want to assume, but I'm guessing it was throughout the majority of your life. Like, how did you be supportive and then but still live your life in a certain
So
way?
like, yeah, like I mean that kind of goes into so as a kid growing up, with growing with somebody who basically had bipolar and like massively and we didn't know it at the time. Like we're 10, 11. My dad doesn't know it. Like we just think that's just who our mom is, right? I remember my mom, me and my brother and my sister, we talk about it to this day. um because she's not like this anymore, thankfully. But there was a um many times where my mom was like, when I say bipolar, you have to understand bipolar means a lot of things. There is a huge spectrum on the bipolar disorder. Some can be like kind of in the center, some can be more depressed, some can be more manic. My mom was much more on the depressed side, but she'd have her manic episodes. And the way it worked for her was that there would be a day where she'd be at peak mania. She would want to go out and spend a ton of money and buy a ton of things and just go, 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 like you've never seen before. Multiple times I'm either working or at home and I get a call and be like, mom's buying, where she's spending a few $100s on each of us. What do you want? And you're like, oh, okay, it's going to be one of those. But we also knew that shortly after, the next couple of days, stay away from mom because now she goes down. And that would mean screaming at us, attempting things like that she shouldn't be attempting, like throwing things, like uh it got really, really, really bad. Really, Maya? It got really, really, really bad. And eventually we learned when she finally went to go see a doctor what it was that she was suffering from. But the point where it got to her go for us to go see her to go see a doctor was a point where we were
Uh,
she is in a mood right now.
a little comic
Uh,
relief.
she's like spinning around the room. Um, there was a point in time where one day we were supposed to go see a play, and my mom didn't show up, and she just texted us like basically like take care of your dad, goodbye kind of thing, and she was just gone. Really, Kat? Like not now. You're a psychopath. And it basically got like she was gone. So my dad had to go look for her. We all went looking for her throughout the city. Eventually we found her. We're like, what is going on? What is happening? So doctor visit, this, that, and the other. We slowly begin to understand. And I'm like 19 years old at this point. In and out mental hospital visits, tons of different types of therapy. Couldn't leave my mom alone for the longest time. The medical bills got so bad that eventually my dad had to look for another job that was paying a lot better, wherever in the US it might be. And he sat on his resume everywhere. And eventually they offered him a job that was paying him a lot more than what he was making now, enough to cover the medical bills and help us all live. It meant he had to move, which would be the first time they've split like that ever. But it was 100% necessary.
Where did he move to?
Minnesota was where he moved. So from
not like
Rhode Island to Minnesota.
So your dad's in Minnesota and your family's in Rhode Island.
Correct.
Okay, wow.
And it sucked because it meant, and my brother was already, and at this point my brother was in college and he was going to school in New York. He eventually took a year off from college to help us like basically watch over our mom, because there were times where she wasn't in the hospital where somebody needed to be with her at all times. And at this point in my life, I was back in college and I was finally going for video game design. I was finally going for something that I wanted to go.
What college was this at?
New England Institute of Technology, which is also a shit school. Don't go there because it's a private school that gouges you for as much money as possible. But that's beside the point. And I had been going for about a year and I was actually doing well because regardless of if I hated like math and programming, I knew I was going for something that I loved, and I was doing like A's and B's. For the first time in my life, I was doing like A's and B's in school. And eventually my brother had to go back to college. We wanted him to go back to college because, my sister wasn't going to college at the time. I at least lived near home, and he was like taking a ton of time out. And my brother was always, there's a lot of layers to why we did what we did. So I'm going to try and tell them as necessary. My brother was always, out of the three of us, the most successful one. He was the one that always did well in school, was the good student, was, the good kid. Not that we were all bad kids or anything, but like he was the one that was always doing well. So me and my sister made the executive decision essentially that said, just go back to school. We'll take care of this. We had a couple arguments here and there, but eventually he went back.
That's a pretty mature decision to say like, okay, this is like his path, for a couple kids to make that decision.
At that point, I'd already effed up my first couple of years of college. Like I already had my shot and I messed it up. My sister wasn't going to college yet. She was she was a much better student than I, but she was at that point done with her associate's degree, which I think was where she stopped. I can't 100% remember, but she was not in college at the time. And I made the executive decision at that point to stop going to school. And I basically told myself, I'll go back when everything's okay again. It didn't quite work out, obviously, in that fantasy land. So for the next year, there was just me and my sister would make sure we both worked at the same restaurant, and we would make sure that one of us was always home.
What restaurant was this at?
Still Applebee's.
Okay. All right.
And so there was, but after the incident, after the incident. So there was, the managers always knew what was going on at the house. And if at any given time we had to say, I have an emergency, I have to go, they didn't argue and they let us go. So we always knew when there was always somebody home with her. I had to drop out of college for that. That sucked. At that time too, like most of my friends from high school were gone. I didn't really, like Dave was the only person I was kind of in touch with, and he was luckily only like 5 minutes away from me. Whenever I needed to hang out, he would always be there. But I needed more in my life. Like there wasn't just enough out. I was so stressed out. Like I would break down crying all the time because I was so worried about my mom. Like I don't think you really understand what it's like to live with somebody with depression until you have to hold them down with your sibling so they stop trying to hurt themselves while they're screaming and writhing around on the ground. Like there's a reason that there was always somebody home, and there was a reason it was such a hard decision for my dad to have to leave for the money but it was either that or like we don't pay the bills. Right. It was like there was no choice there. So there was always somebody home, but again, there wasn't enough out for me. It was too stressful. And at that point in time, I had just gotten into the esports scene. Starcraft 2 in particular, I was huge into. I would watch tournaments all the time. I would like this was really before Twitch was like huge. A lot of YouTube. I watched a ton of YouTube, and the big YouTubers I watched were Husky Starcraft, HD Starcraft, Day 9 TV. Those three were like my go-to people, and they were my out. They were absolutely everything that I would do basically when I was home and I didn't have to do anything and everything was okay and calm at the house. Eventually, I started playing StarCraft 2. I was like, I'm going to get good at this game. And I also was like, what they do is easy. I want to do what they do. It looks like fun. So I eventually got a headset. I figured out how to record stuff. And I started to play, record, and commentate pro games on StarCraft. That's kind of where I got my start. Hence my name, MathasStarcraft, on Twitch. And what my original channel, which is still up, MathasStarcraft, I started commentating on games, and I quickly learned I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the meta. I didn't know the game as well as I thought I did. I was Bronze League. Like I was terrible at the game. But the thing is, I loved it. It was what was my escape from my everyday, especially if Dave couldn't come over and my sister was working, whatever. It was my escape. And I started very slowly to record videos for YouTube. And it was only StarCraft stuff. And I started playing a lot of StarCraft, a lot of it, because as soon as I learned I wasn't good, I wanted to get good. So on top of making StarCraft videos, I played a ton of StarCraft too. And that's kind of where my start on YouTube actually, like, it begins, is I was making StarCraft commentaries.
What was the highest you got in the StarCraft ladder?
I was Diamond. I was a Diamond
Oh,
player.
wow. Okay. So you weren't bad.
Yeah, I know it took me a couple years, but I got there. Like, okay. I was Diamond, and I was trying to fight my way into Masters. Which, again, but that was like the only game I played. I didn't play like anything else. I'd spend my nights recording, watching, and playing StarCraft 2. That was my life.
Got it.
Eventually, I got good. Like, eventually, I got good at the game.
That is, I mean, I was surprised that you said Diamond. I didn't think you were gonna say that. But so at this point, so you're out of college, you're working solely in the restaurant, and then at any point did you go back to college, or once you left? Isn't the initials of the school NEAT? Is that like, did people ever say NEAT? Was it New England Institute of Technology?
Yeah, NEIT, but nobody said NEAT.
No one said. So was that the last time? Was that your last experience in school?
That was my last experience in school. Yeah.
How close?
I never went back.
How close were you, or are you, to?
A year, one more year, and I was done.
Do you ever think you'll go back and do that?
No.
Never.
No.
Okay.
My skill set is completely different now.
Okay.
Like, I'm so out of the loop with programming, and my skill set has obviously become something much different. Yeah, no, I'll never go back.
Okay. One thing we skipped over, and then I want to transition to your YouTube life, is you talked about history. And then at what point, because I know this about you, some people may know about you, but you're into something, or you were into something called LARP. Can you explain what that is?
Oh, yeah.
And then how you got into it?
LARPing is live action role playing, LARP. So there's some pictures out there of me too that I've posted of me in my LARP uniform, my costume. So the idea of LARPing is, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, think of it as a real Dungeons and Dragons in real life. You go for a weekend, depending on like the quality of the LARP you're going to, dressed up as a character, and you play a weekend in this magical world with its own rule set, where there's a story going on and side stories going on as your own character with a history, and you basically play D&D in real life. That's basically what it is. I did that for like 3 or 4 years before I stopped.
How did you get into that? Like, at one point, did someone say, "Hey, join the dark side and get like"?
So like, there's always like
or the light side.
Me and my friends always talked about LARPing, but we never really did it. And eventually there was somebody in college that I was friends with that actually did LARP. And we all just made a decision to, like, let's try it out once. So I brought Dave along and my girlfriend at the time along, and we all went LARPing. And wouldn't you know it, I'm pretty much the only one that stuck with it. My friend hated it. My girlfriend at the time did it with me until, like, we broke up. And that was what I did.
Wait,
I played Mythical Journeys, if you want to check it out. Mythical Journeys.
Was it in like a gym, a high school gym? Was it in the forest?
No,
like,
they rented out. They rented out for the 6 weekends a year, an entire campsite.
Okay.
They rented out a whole campsite where you would sleep on site, like tons of woods to just walk around and stuff. And they basically turned the buildings that they had there into like medieval buildings. Now, again, luckily, most of the buildings they were basically brick or log, so they looked like they fit, and they redecorated everything inside. Like this was a LARP that I paid a pretty penny to go to every
Oh, you
weekend.
had
It
to
was
pay
an
money to
expensive
do
LARP.
this?
Yeah, I paid money to do it, but
Like how much are
that
we
money,
talking?
as like a buck 50 for the weekend.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and there was like hundreds of people that would go.
Okay.
So like that money, like again, that was like you're paying money to go, but it also was probably one of the best LARPing experiences that you could have in the area.
Like top tier LARPing.
Yeah, costumes, like they had a costume like requirement, like you had to like at least be passable. Like you couldn't just slap on like a ragtag costume and be like, I'm whatever. Like you had to meet very particular requirements for them to let you in.
So, I have to ask you, what was your first character, and what did you dress up as, and how
Human.
does?
I stayed human. It was a take on one of my old D&D characters. His name was his name was James Patrick Robert Henry McCoy III. He was a pirate, like drug dealing
Wait,
kind of guy.
James Patrick Henry.
Robert Henry McCoy III.
That's impressive that you know that. And he was a swashbuckling drug dealer. Is that
Basically, yeah, he was a swashbuckling like drug dealer. Eventually,
And so what did?
basically alchemy was my skill, and I would make potions and like try and sell them for money and stuff.
Okay, so what was your costume like? What did you wear?
So initially my first costume, because this character is the one I've always had. He actually never died. He just took drastically different roads than I initially anticipated. So as initial, I bought a pirate costume off of the internet, basically,
Okay.
and that was my initial costume. That lasted me a single weekend because I did not realize how much hiking, like fighting, like exercise it was going to be. It got messy, sweaty, gross, and I had to throw it away at the end of it. Eventually, I got brought into a group of people that were in the LARP called the Shield of Andronicus, which is a long story behind them. But they provided if you got in, they would provide you with a tunic, like that was their uniform,
Like a status symbol.
So you could exactly. So in the game, they always knew he's part of the Shield of Andronicus, and like being part of that group meant something. And so eventually, that's what happened to me. And I wore like initially a gray tunic that was meant initiate, and then when I passed all the tests, black and white tunic.
Nice. So you said you're an alchemist, and then we're going to divert from LARPing. So you made potions and sell.
I made potions for a little while to
Like,
make
did you
some money, but
physically make them, or like how does that work in the LARP
so like
world? You
what
have,
they
like,
would do in the
here's a
LARP is they would
potion?
go throughout. Yeah, they would go around the whole campsite, and they would hide things in trees and in bushes and stuff that were basically your herbs that you would gather and stuff.
Okay.
Obviously, only a limited number per weekend. You would go out, you would take those. At the end of the weekend, you'd basically take like look at what you had, and you would submit those at the end and write down on a piece of paper the potions you want to brew between this session and the next weekend that you play. You go back to the beginning of the next weekend, they would give you the potions that you made, and the potions were basically like a little bottle that you'd pop open. You would pretend to drink it, and there was a piece of paper that you'd open up, and it would tell you the effects of the potion. Depending on how good you are at making potions, the effects varied.
So are they like little vials of like colored water? I mean, I'm just
No,
trying.
there's nothing in them but paper. There's just paper in them.
Oh, there's no liquid in them.
No, there's no liquid in them at all. Because you need to put the paper in there and you need to take it out.
Got it. Okay, and then so you would either drink them or sell them to other people.
Yep.
And what would the currency be?
Depends on the potion. So there was silver and gold pieces in the game, and they were actual metal coins that had the symbol of the LARP on them, and like they had weight to them, and that was you could carry currency around. It was really cool. I loved it.
That sounds cool. Did you ever like? What did you buy with them? Like, did you have like a marriage ceremony with your ex-girlfriend in game, or like what did you do?
The money you would spend on services of like hiring a mercenary or sending like something through the parcel, basically through the mail, would cost money. Buying other potions, buying magic spells, like that kind of thing. There was always something that you could buy within the game.
Okay, got it. So eventually, when did your LARP flame die out?
When I moved far enough away where making the trip just wasn't worth it for me anymore.
Okay. All right. So I think we've gotten to know a little bit about the man behind the bearded YouTube channel. So we're gonna go to the next part of the show, which is like getting in depth, and a lot of people are saying, Dan, we just got really in depth with him. But this is more about kind of your more public life, or you as a content creator and personality online. But prior to that, I want to know, what was your first gaming experience that you can remember?
I remember playing the NES back at my grandfather's house when I was like 4. I remember playing, I think Adventure Island was the name. Like it was the skateboarding, like caveman game.
Yeah, where you'd have
And
like it looked like
a bone,
yeah, a
or
bone, a
yeah,
stick with a
yep,
bone on the end of it.
yep.
So that was
That's like,
your first memory.
yeah, that's like my first memory playing a video game. Eventually I got an NES. Like my parents got an NES, and I got Mario, Duck Hunt, like the usual, and it was a staple ever since, basically.
All right, throughout your life, what could you single-handedly pinpoint has been your best gaming experience?
God, that's a very difficult
Because
question.
you
My
you
best
mentioned
gaming,
sysop.
yeah, my best gaming experience. Frickin' hell, that's a tough question. I think I'd even say it's an impossible question to answer, Dan.
Well, give me
Because
one of
there's
your
just,
top tier.
yeah, like I don't know, man. Like, let's see. Playing Final Fantasy for the first time is my very first RPG that I ever played to its completion, I should say, or owned, because I did play Mario RPG at my friend's house, but I never owned it.
Which Final Fantasy? The first one?
Seven,
Oh,
seven.
okay.
So like I was late to the RPG party.
Okay.
Playing that and like realizing a good story could be told in a video game like blew my effing mind. That was great. Another good one I'll say is like playing my very first MMO, Star Wars Galaxies. We've talked about this before, and playing Star Wars Galaxies and being one of the only like 3 Jedi on my server, before they changed how Jedi worked, before they ruined the game.
Explain how that is for people that aren't familiar with Star Wars Galaxy.
So Star Wars Galaxies was pre-WoW, still like very Wild West in the MMO universe. So they didn't have classes in Star Wars Galaxies. They had skill trees, and if you wanted to be good at something, you had to do it a lot to get better and better. And like there was Master Doctor was one of the main things you could be. In order to become a Master Doctor, you had to go through multiple skill trees that eventually led to Master Doctor that unlocked like a bunch of other things you could do. And in the old days, Jedi was a super hard class to unlock. You needed to master 3 skills that were randomly chosen at character creation that you had no idea what were chosen out of like a ton of skills. And once you mastered all of those, you would unlock the Force sensitive slot on your account. And then you can make a brand new character, fresh character that was in the Force sensitive slot that you could then take down Force paths and lightsaber paths and become a Jedi. Problem was, back in the day, if you died 2 times, I believe, as a Jedi or a Force sensitive, that character was deleted permanently, and you had to make a brand new character in that Force sensitive slot. Why is they'd be like, that's not so bad, just don't die. Well, the cool thing about Jedi in that game was anytime you used powers or your lightsaber in front of another player, you were immediately flagged for world PvP. Anybody could attack you, and anybody could kill you, because Jedis weren't supposed to exist in this time.
Wait, so how did you create a Jedi character if you didn't know what the secret traits were? You just stumbled upon.
So there were 2 ways to do it. Basically, people could just start mastering classes, and then once you mastered a class, you could like delete that and get rid of the skill and start doing going down another line.
So you know it's not this skill. Kinda?
Yeah,
Okay.
or like you knock it out and then you just do it in the next one.
Got
So
it.
people would just start going through all the skills and hoping they do it that way. Or there was an like super rare item that was called a holocron, and the Jedi holocron was found on a very particular mob that was incredibly hard to kill, and it wouldn't always drop. It was a very small drop percentage, and you could use the holocron, and that holocron would tell you one of the 3 skills that you need to master. Then the holocron would go dead and be worthless to anybody else.
Okay.
So there was a market for people who, what they would do is they'd go farm these things and they'd sell them for bank. They would make so much money off of them. That was like, those are the ways that people would become a Jedi. I grinded. I just went through until I hit. Yeah, I went through all the skills until I hit the requisite 3.
So when that
And then I made it
happened,
better.
like, were you just like, what was that moment like?
Oh,
for you?
it was like I was fucking like cheering, man. That was because again, at that time, like I was one of 3 on the server. That was it. It was it. And the cool thing about Jedi was, it's like you become a Jedi, you use powers, you get flagged for world PvP. That's fine.
Is that
One
permanent?
person,
You were tagged permanently. Did that ever turn off?
for like X a number of hours.
Okay.
Until like it would go away. And it's fine if only one person sees you, because the Jedi class was OP as hell, but that was the point. So one person would attack you, you could kill them no problem.
Okay.
It was when bounty hunters would find out about you, and a group of 10 bounty hunters would hunt you throughout the galaxy and just kill you because you're worth a ton of money. So that was it was a cool experience. It was such a cool experience that is just not in MMOs anymore.
So you were one of 3 on the server. How did your Jedi quest end?
I never died.
You never died. So
no,
what happened?
because I was part of a big guild. I was part of a big guild. So that guild, if for some reason I got flagged, would always be there to protect me if I needed it.
Got it. Do you remember the name of your Jedi character?
It was like Chilastra or something weird and dumb.
And what was the race and gender and
A female Zabrak, I believe, is what it was. It was cool. It was a really cool experience that I enjoyed.
That's awesome.
What server? I can't remember. It began with a CH. That's all I remember.
That's awesome, man. That's like something that's you'll remember forever and can never be recreated, which is why
Nope. That magic is just not in MMOs anymore.
Yeah. All right, so that was one of your best gaming experience. My next question for you is what inspired you to try YouTube? You've already kind of hit on that and talked about Starcraft. So my question to you is, when did you know Mathas Starcraft? So your YouTube channel where you did YouTube commentary on Starcraft games. When did you know that wasn't going to work out, or what made you pivot and start to work on other things?
So there was a few things that kind of determined that. So Starcraft eventually, as a scene, started to kind of die out. I was doing like live tournaments and stuff. Like I was eventually getting hired for pittance, like very, very little money, to do like some live casting on live tournaments and stuff. But it was like under $100 kind of pittance. Like it was not a lot, but I had fun doing it. And I loved it. And I got to like rub elbows with some of the big Starcraft 2, players at the time. But eventually like my growth just never really kind of pushed forward. It very much stagnated around like 200 subscribers with like 25 to 50 views a video.
When do you think this was, roughly year-wise?
I can tell you.
Okay.
I can tell you right now. Mathas Starcraft. My first video went live. Oh, that wasn't even my first video. I had a video live like 4 years ago. So like 4 years ago.
So 2012.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's how that kind of started. So eventually that started going away, but eventually another big what happened was I wanted to start. I basically came across Project Zomboid. Project Zomboid I had stumbled across on a website. Somebody was talking about how cool of a concept of a game this was. This is before DayZ was even a thing, like didn't exist. Zombie survival games were still very rare, and this was like a hardcore zombie survival game. And it was just a pre-alpha demo. They were looking for funding, pre-Kickstarter days, like just like the old Minecraft style, basically, of selling a pre-alpha. If you want it, you buy it for like $8, however. And I did it, and I played it, and I was like, this is a really cool game. So I did a video on it because it was my first time really doing a video that was not StarCraft related. And I was just talking about the game and why I liked it so much. And just by happenstance, that video got picked up by indiegames.com, which is just a website that kind of highlights like games and stuff. And they were doing something on Project Zomboid, and they grabbed my video as...
Was this video on Mathas Starcraft or Mathas Games?
Mathas Starcraft.
Okay.
This was on Mathas Starcraft. So they grabbed that video and embedded it within the article. And for the first time, I saw a video, what true traction in a video looked like video, like views and comments and things that I, as a content creator, never dreamed that would happen and never ever expected, I guess. And it was the coolest thing. I remember getting. Let's see if I can find while I'm talking. Let's see if I can find the video. But basically, it was like the first time I saw a video go above 1,000 views and like 100 likes or something, and that blew my mind. And people wanted to see more of it, and people wanted to see me play more of it. So that's where I was like, all right, I could do that. Like, I could do more if you guys were going to watch more. And I started my very first Project Zomboid Let's Play that saw more views than any of my StarCraft stuff ever did. And so I saw more growth on my channel than I've ever seen at the time I had ever seen in my entire life. And that kind of kickstarted everything. Eventually, I was able to, when I finally, like, it took another year, maybe a year and a half. I eventually hit like 1,000 subscribers, and Maker Studios, the game station at the time was one of their things, wanted to bring me on board. Not for the game station though, but for their, like, basically, like, I always describe it like, think baseball. You got the major leagues and the minor leagues. So they basically want to bring me on the minor leagues, which is where they would take a bunch of small channels, and basically, like, let you into the network. This is when networks were much more important than they are now. And let me in. And basically, the way it worked is there's hundreds of thousands of different channels in the minor leagues. When you got big enough, they would bring you to the big boy league.
Okay.
The problem is, at one point in my Mathas Starcraft channel's career, there was something with Google AdSense sucks, by the way. It's terrible. They will flag your account for any small thing. At some point, they suspected me of, like, clicking my own ads or something like that to make money. I'm like, okay, yeah, that'll make that, sure. So they shut down my AdSense account. So Maker wanted to bring me in, but they couldn't because my channel had been flagged for AdSense. And they basically said, if you make a new channel, we can bring that channel in.
Were you
because
freaking out when that happened?
Oh yeah, I was having a heart attack because for the first time I was seeing like $5 or less, like, coming to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, I can actually make a little money doing this.
Were you torn when that happened? Were you torn at all to be like, okay, I'm doing Planet Zomboid or Project Zomboid, but I really like StarCraft, or was it?
I was doing both for a while.
Okay. All right.
I was doing both for a while until eventually one was just so far beyond the other one that I just had to let StarCraft go.
Got it. So they bring in this. So they're like, okay, we can't take this one because it's flagged. We'll take a new channel, and then what happened?
So that's when I made the MathasGames channel.
Okay.
I did it within seconds of them telling me that's what they would do. So I made the MathasGames channel. I made 2 announcement videos over the course of a week to let everybody know I'm Mathas Starcraft. I'm moving over to MathasGames. And that's when I started making content on the channel that I clearly own now. That was like, that was 3 years ago. My channel is like, the first notice is called "My Channel is Moving Attention." Like, that was the video name. I'm in a tank top, and I have, like, the chin strap before I was even had a beard, and I moved over to Mathas Starcraft. I moved from Mathas Starcraft to MathasGames.
Got it. So you moved that over real quick. Where did the name Mathas come from?
Oh,
because your real name's Mike Martin.
Yeah, my real name's Michael. Mathas is, everybody's like, where'd you get the name from? It must be cool. I'm like, it's the dumbest, most boring story of all time. I was playing, it was World of Warcraft launch week. My very first character, I hit random. It gave me Matthias. I deleted the I.
And that's it.
Mathas. That is it.
And you just stuck with it.
And I liked it. I was like, Mathas sounds cooler than Matthias. Mathas it is. And that's been my name ever since. Back in 4.
So that was the birth of Mathas. And then you started creating different content. You said you did both StarCraft and other Let's Plays at the time. During this process, like, as a young creator, as a early channel, who did you look to beyond StarCraft to be like, I'd like to be like this, or, oh, I really like what this person does?
I watched a ton of people, and I still do watch a lot of YouTube, but I do watch a ton of people. But no shame, like, back then I was watching Northern Lion. I was watching Ryan a lot. I still was mostly watching StarCraft, but when it came to this other stuff, I remember discovering Northern Lion. He had like 30,000 subscribers maybe at the time, and enjoying his content. And I outside of him, I don't think I really watched too many other people outside of StarCraft. I was never really a PewDiePie fan. Not that, like, the guy, like, as somebody who's met the guy multiple times, he's an amazing dude, really cool, but I never really enjoyed his content. I can't think of anybody else other than Ryan that I really watched, other than, like, a ton of StarCraft. I looked up to Day 9. I looked up to HD and Husky StarCraft. Those were, like, the big names.
Got it. So you're watching Northern Lion. Maybe you draw some inspiration from me, but you're looking at someone outside of the StarCraft world to just see how it's done. So
Yeah.
at that point, you'd mentioned a turning point for you was when you did that Project Zomboid video. After
Mhm.
that moment, was there like a turning point when you're like, this is it, like this is when it happened for you, or there was another pivotal point
Happened
somewhere?
how? Like happened as in like I want to do this as a job kind of thing, or
No, like as you're plugging along, so you're doing Project Zomboid videos. Like, was there
Mhm.
another point when you're like, "Wow, I can really make a run at this thing," or did you decide that
I don't
before it
think I
happened?
really ever. I don't think I really ever decided that I'm gonna make a run at this thing for another year after that. The thing that I loved about YouTube and still love to this day wasn't the fact that I make money off of it and I got to do it as a job. Or I get to do it as a job. One of the reasons I think a lot of people like watching Let's Players is because it's like hanging out with a friend. And that was kind of my escape always. Listening to Northern Lion and other people, it was always like I was hanging out with a friend while we played video games, except I just didn't talk. They just came off as very friendly people. And making YouTube videos kind of filled that void for me where I could feel like, or at least share my passion. Because that's the other thing, too. I talk about it a little bit prior, but in high school and stuff, there was a very small number of people that I could share my passion with. When it came to YouTube, especially when I started to grow a little bit from Project Zomboid, I could I could share that passion with more people than I ever imagined. I will never forget hitting 100 subscribers or hitting 50 subscribers because that number to this day is like a huge number to me. Like it's so many people. And to be like I can share my passion with 100 people or I can share it with like 50 people. That's insane. That is what I loved about it. So it wasn't necessarily there was never really a point where I was like I'm going to make a run at this. It was this this kind of validates my hobby in a way that never been validated before and I have such joy sharing this with other people whether I know them or not. And I loved every second of it. And I still do.
So when this is going on and you're creating this, what was your family's reaction to this? Did you share it with them? Did you keep it from them?
I hid it with from them initially, but after like a couple months I shared it with them. My parents thought it was cool. Like they always thought it was really cool. It was a little weird initially to have me talking basically to myself downstairs while I recorded videos. But you know when they I remember showing them videos not of just showing them the number of like that's like mom that's 10 people, this 10 views. 10 people other than me watched my own video. Like and she's like that's weird. Like 10 people watched you play this game? And I'm like, "Yeah, it's nuts. Isn't it super cool?" She's like, "That is kind of cool." They were never discouraging about it. They loved it. And that they were always super supportive of it. It's just another for them like and for me it was just another way to out my passion of video games. It's another avenue to kind of share it with people.
Like, and it's almost like another D&D at that
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Basically.
At any point, was there anyone that like mentored you through the process, or that you were like,
Oh,
no, so you were just you figured it out by yourself?
I was free balling it the whole way, buddy. I was just like figuring shit out at the seat of my pants. I was just kind of just taking it and just going my way. And I experimented with so many different types of commentary. I like everybody does, like I tried to eventually would try to emulate other people and see if that worked. But you just eventually learn that if they wanted to watch somebody pretend to be PewDiePie, for an example, they're just going to go watch PewDiePie.
Yeah.
They're not going to come to you for second-rate PewDiePie. So you eventually learn like that is you just be yourself, man. Just be yourself. There's one of the things I always tell people, and I get asked a ton, especially at conventions, is like, "What are your tips? What are your tips for doing this?" Which we can talk about later. But the one thing I always say is, don't worry about being successful. No matter what you do, no matter how your commentary is, you will always find an audience. That audience could be one person, 100 people, or 1,000,000 people, but you will always find an audience, and you will always be making somebody's day just by uploading that video. And that's what drove me. Like that's what I told myself, and I always found it's so cool that one person would watch my video. That I was like, somebody is enjoying watching my video. I'm going to keep making it, if only for them. Like that was cool to me.
Mathis, you're doing a great job of this, by the way. I mean, you're like, I'm glad you're the first guest because, I mean, you find out what's most important and you find a way to share that. And that's awesome, man. You're doing a good job. So,
Thanks.
a few more questions for you before we take our first break.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have any goals for yourself or for your channel, specifically in gaming? Like, do you set goals like when New Year's came around, you're like, I want to do this, this, and this year? Or how do you approach that?
I try not to, because if you're gonna set goals on YouTube, you're asking for disappointment, in my opinion. YouTube is such a volatile market when it comes to numbers. I mean, I obsess just like every other person in the world about numbers, right? Like I gotta watch. It's my business. It's my baby, and you can influence the numbers a little bit. But I find if I set goals, I'm probably gonna end up disappointed. The only thing I ever really say is like I just want to do like just more variety, more things, more collaborations. The goals I set for myself aren't necessarily binary or numbers based. They're just I would like to collaborate with X, Y, and Z person this year if possible.
And that was one of my questions for you. Who's your dream collaboration with either one or multiple people, and what's the game?
I've already had my dream collaboration, honestly.
Yeah, what was your dream?
I will. We can talk a little bit about it if you want, but I'll never forget like when I started really getting into watching Let's Plays. After Ryan, I discovered like the Jesse, the Dodger, the Total Biscuit crew, Cryo, like those people. And I remember watching like TGS podcast, Co-optional podcast, and I was like, so many times, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be so cool if I could just talk to them or like be on the Co-optional podcast with them or whatever? Because they were again my escape for so long, and I always thought about that. And recently, it's happened. Thanks to many different happenstances, I've been able to work with and game with regularly, just even off camera, Total Biscuit, Jesse, Strippin, Dodger, Cryotic, like these people that you like aspire to be essentially on YouTube, and to be in that circle is it's really hard not to fanboy, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's awesome.
So the first time you did that, what did you like maintain a level of professionalism? Were you holding it on the inside or?
Yeah, I held it on the inside. Of course I did. Because you're not going to freak out, right? Like freaking out isn't going to help you at all. Yeah. I mean, and you have to realize that they're just people too. Like they're not. And the more you talk and hang out with them, the more you realize they are just people. And they're freaking cool people. And that's the other thing I love about YouTube too, is like, for the most part, on a video, what you see is what you get. Like, they're not pretending to be anyone else. They are them. So when you talk to them, and this is the weird part about YouTube, is like, you feel like you know them already. And to a degree, you do. But you have to remember, and it's one of the things I see a few people struggle with when meeting somebody else, is like, you may know them, but they don't know you. They have no idea who you are. They've never, they've never known who you were. And there's a good chance after you leave that they're never going to know who you are. So acting all freaking out and like trying to be their friend and stuff doesn't really help.
So, but at some point, like, you have to acknowledge that, in particular in what you do, is that like you realize that that's going to happen to you, or that does happen to you. So how do you treat that when that happens? We were at PAX East, and I remember, someone came up to you and you're like, hey, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if somebody comes up, it's awesome. See, that's another. It's so weird because I have to remind myself the way I saw like Jesse, Dodger, and like the crew essentially as these superstars, as these people who I watched every day. I'm that to some people, and that's hard for me to swallow, as I'm sure it is for them, because, like I said to you before, I never really went into this with like swinging for the fences, assuming this was going to be my job. It just kind of happened. And the fact that it's become what it is, and people are excited for me to autograph something or take a picture with me and stuff, that is never not weird, and not weird in a bad way. It's just weird in that, to me, I'm just Mike, I'm just Mike who plays video games and talks on camera. Like, that's all I do. That's what I do. That's who I am. But to them, I am what TB was as an example to me. So when people come up to me, I'm just super pumped because it makes my day. When people recognize me and like want to take a picture, to me that makes my day because it means what I'm doing is working and people are enjoying the content that they're supposed to be enjoying. So
See, the only thing I'd push back against what you said is you said that it just kind of happened, and I would strongly disagree with that because you were consistently putting out content. You were consistently like grinding, and so it didn't just happen. I mean, can you explain, like, just share a little bit about how you were in that position for it to happen?
well, again, I attributed a lot to luck. And I know you would disagree with me, but
What?
oh.
I am, because it's not luck.
So again, I got on the grind and I grinded for a very, very long time and I still grind to this day. The thing about YouTube too is people people assume that what we do is very easy. They don't realize how difficult it is. So yeah, I keep grinding, but the reason I say I'm lucky is because certain chips fell into place that otherwise wouldn't have. One big one is Ryan, Northern Lion, who is one of my great friends now, luckily.
That
But
you referred to as a chip.
well,
No, I'm just joking.
Let me say circumstances fell in. So what I mean by that is one day Northern Lion was doing one of his very first or very early NLSSs. And he used to do Q&As at the end of them. I don't know if you remember this, but he used to. And I put a question in that said, hey, I heard you're going to PAX East. Do you want to grab lunch sometime? And he said yes on camera, like, that'd be great, whatever. Little did I know that he was actually just kind of kidding.
Yeah.
Like, he was just saying it to be nice. I thought he was being serious. So I went to PAX East on a one-day pass that I nicked from my friend that he let me use to go in so I could get lunch with Northern Lion, the big Northern Lion.
And in your head, you're like, this is definitely happening. He said yes on camera.
It was 100% happening. And I started, tweeting and whatnot, and
Wait, tweeting
eventually
him?
I was tweeting him and Nick, and Nick basically was like, "Hey man, this guy thinks we're basically doing lunch. Where should I tell him to meet?" And Ryan, I guess, like, sighed and was like, "I didn't think it was actually going to happen." So he was like, I mean, I guess he can come hang out for a little bit. So Nick tweeted where they were because Nick's a nice guy, as we all agree. He's probably one of like the nicest dudes
humans ever. Yeah.
Yeah. So Nick, being the dude that, basically like let it happen, I showed up and I hung out with him, Josh, Nick, and another guy that I think was just one of their friends. And I hung out with them for like 8 hours. I just didn't go away.
Was it awkward, or was it like, were you like
no,
fanboying out?
Super just we hung out. Eventually they invited me back to the hotel room for like drinks and stuff. Like I didn't invite myself to the
was
hotel room.
Was it a pity invite, or was it, do you think it was
it might have been. It 100% might have been, but I accepted and I hung out with them until I basically had to go home. And my friend who was also there, totally, again, Dave, was the coolest guy and was just like, just go do your thing. I can have fun by myself. Don't worry. Like, I know this is important to you. And I went and had lunch with them, and I hung out and was probably a nuisance for 8 hours. And that was my first contact with Northern Lion. And at the end of it, he was like, hey, man, it'd be cool if I could get you on the NLSS at some point. What's your Skype? And like, so obviously it like worked because we're friendly enough to click. And eventually we got Skype, emailed each other, and started talking a little bit. But not until I think a year after that did we do our first collab, which was Crusader Kings 2. And that's when growth started.
How did that happen? Did he contact you? Did you like, hey, we should do a series together?
Yeah, so again, like we met, we're friends. And the reason, like, I attribute a lot of my Kickstarter growth to him, because even after meeting him, like, my growth was pittance. It was super slow. I was at like 1,000 subscribers, which sounds like a lot to some people, but it's one of those things like in YouTube world where you think one number is big until you get there, and then you realize just how small you are. So like 100 subscribers, you like, it's going to be huge when I have 100 subscribers. Then you realize you are like the smallest fish in the smallest pond. You get to 1,000 subscribers, you're like, people are going to take me seriously now. I have 1,000 subscribers. Then you realize you're just a small fish in a slightly larger pond. So, I'm at like 1,000 subscribers forever. I'm super small fry, but I think I'm like big shit. And I I'm like, hey, like he was into Crusader Kings 2 at the time, and I was getting into Crusader Kings 2 at the time. I was like, would you want to like do something? It'd be super fun. And he was down for it. And I brought in a Roomba, who was a growing YouTube channel, bigger than me, who does all like CK2, EU4 stuff. And the three of us got together and we did our first collab. And that was the initial like kickstart for my channel. That was like what brought me from getting like 10 subs a day to like 70 subs a day. And that was a huge kick for me and got the ball rolling. And I guess maybe at that point might be when I was probably like, okay, I can maybe take a go at this, as in like I might be able to make enough money to pay a bill.
Mm-hmm.
I took a picture of my very first paycheck from YouTube, and I still have that picture to this day.
You do?
Yeah.
Where's it at?
It's on my Facebook, actually.
Okay, we'll have to check it out. So,
yeah, you can check it out.
Last question. You mentioned a Roomba. I know that you've done strategy stuff with him and whatnot. How did you meet him? Because it was it an NLSS moment where you?
No, no. I just was like, I basically used Ryan as leverage, essentially. Like I knew we basically needed somebody who knew what they were doing in the game, because me and Ryan were not good at it. And Arumba did this as his channel. He was maybe around like 20. So at the time, Ryan was probably like a little over 100,000. Arumba was probably like 10 to 15,000. I was at like 2. And we knew I wanted to bring in somebody who knew what they were doing, so we'd have some guidance. And I basically was like, can I reach out to Arumba like to do it? And Ryan had watched Arumba a little bit to get to understand the game. He was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I reached out to Arumba, name dropped Ryan basically, and Arumba was on board.
So it's not luck. It's been. I don't want to. And it sounds like, if I say it like this, it sounds not genuine, which it is. With
Carefully crafted.
Yeah, no, it's socially engineered, but it was in a way that is real. Like
I think you can attest to, like, any business, like networking is imperative to growth. Period. If you never network, you're never gonna grow. And it was just good timing mixed with good decisions and a little bit of balls to really push the channel forward. And that's.
It all started with the lunch date made online that was really one-sided.
Don't even tell me that you're mad that I did that.
No, I was talking about yours. This interview has nothing to do with our setup.
Well, you don't want to tell that story? No, I think it has to do with me and Ryan.
I don't. This interview is not about me. It's about you, Matt.
Yeah, but it was me that did that to you.
So I guess the way I look at that is that, unless we explain it, people have no idea. I look at that as like your way of like, I don't want to say like paying it forward, I guess.
I wanted to meet you. You were cool. I didn't know anything about you at the time. And
all right, tell the story real quick, and then we can take a break and get to the next.
I can't even remember the major details of it outside of the fact that I made up a lie about lunch.
All right, let me set the stage. So I started watching Mathas, and I followed you on Twitter. Then we started talking, and then we met at PAX East. And I'm like, we face-to-face, hung out for a couple minutes, and then Mathas is like, hey, Northern Lion wants to have lunch with you. And I'm like, okay, I watch his videos, but I've never like conversed with him. And then you can take over the rest of the story, Mathas.
Yeah, and then I told Ryan about Dan, and I told Dan that I told Ryan that Dan wanted to do lunch with us. And Ryan was down. He's like, yeah, sure, why not? And they both sat down, and that's how I got you to meet Ryan.
Yeah, so it was all socially engineered by you,
I guess.
Yeah. So I think that's a great segue. We're going to take a quick 3-minute break. When we come back, we're going to play a quick game of rapid fire 21 questions with Mathas to really find out, when he's not thinking, what is he like? So we're going to get his real interest without any social engineering. After that, we're going to take a few audience questions. And then finally, we're going to wrap things up with the game show part of the show we called Enter the Suck, where Mathas is going to take the Shooting Stars Ultimate Challenge and see how he racks up and scores points and sets the bar for future guests to follow. And at the end of Season 1 of Shooting Stars Live, a championship belt is going to be awarded to the guest with the highest point totals. So this is not something you want to slack off in. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 3 to 5 minutes. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. There's probably about another 90 minutes left of the show. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we will be right back. Right back. There you go.